Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to this deep woo episode entitled World of Enchantment with Catherine Edwards. You can find her work here at Catherine Edwards on YouTube and also at catherineedwards.life. Catherine, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It seems like it's been a long while, hasn't it, since we've had one of our update chats. It seems like an age. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I just took 2 days mini vacation. Wasn't long enough, but still, it helps. How are you doing?
Good. Up and down. I would honestly say up and down. The fact that November's hit and, I'm sort of swinging up and down a little bit like a pendulum at the moment, whereas I can see lots of really positive things happening, I was hoping for a bit more to have been a little bit more obvious by this stage in the game. And I know we've been saying that for a lot, and patience is a virtue, but I was having a good chat this morning to Medina and David in Australia, and I think anyone who's joining us from Australia will be feeling the pinch a bit at the moment, and New Zealand, and obviously a few other places around the globe. So interesting times. Interesting seems to be my favorite word at the moment.
Yeah, interesting is the polite way of saying it. I feel you too. I mean, we all had this hype about Red October. And in many cases, yes, a lot of things actually happen in October. And I see a lot of little defeats, if you want to call it that, for the bad guys in October. But I was hoping for more. I have to be honest. I was hoping that I would be joined by a few more normies who maybe for the first time would have gone, yes, I see it. Okay, we're at war, or there's this, or there's that, and that really didn't happen yet. On the contrary, I still have a bunch of normies who's like, see, Jean-Claude, nothing happened in October. Where I don't agree that nothing happened, I do agree with them that there seems to be missing that aha moment where a lot of new people might have woken up to the fact that maybe the pendulum was starting to swing the other way. I don't see it right now. So, and I agree with you. I've been up and down pretty much all of October myself, trying to follow all this stuff, stay encouraged, stay vigilant in what I think I know, because again, there's so much disinformation out there. It's absolutely crazy to try to navigate through all of this. And you and I doing these shows, I know a lot of research goes into that. We try to stay on page with everything, and that puts us in a position sometimes of, oh man, how do I share this news? It's not always good news. At the same time, we need to have these adult conversations here with the audience. Before we start that, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us on this live interactive show. If you're watching here on BeyondMystic, please go ahead and go subscribe here to Catherine Edwards' YouTube channel, and there you'll find that last interview. And what's going on with this picture? You look absolutely gorgeous here. Who took this picture? This one here.
Oh, thank you. Well, one of my friends, long story, but I helped them out with a difficult situation with their horse. And one of her friends is a lovely photographer. So he came and took some pictures with my animals. And it was just absolutely fantastic because I hadn't had any pictures taken with my animals. So that's Dylan, one of my guinea pigs. And I'm always happiest when I'm with my animals. So I've got some beautiful ones of the horses, the dogs, the guinea pigs, the cats. Some of the cats were a bit evasive, but we got most of them in. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're absolutely glowing in this picture. When I saw her, like, oh, wow, she's gorgeous. Okay.
I every time, Dylan is one of my main stress reliefs, because if you're feeling down, if you go and look at Dylan, he's just the most beautiful, beautiful little creature. So everything becomes okay. But going back to what you were saying before, I think it's really, really good that we can have these honest conversations and sort of say, look, we're still questioning, because all our conversations up until now have been very much about keeping an open mind, keeping a questioning, keeping using all our senses about what's going on around us, because we know that what's been happening we're very well aware now that all of us since birth really have been subject to a lot of mind control. And I think it's really, really important that we keep that in the forefront of our minds with all the information we're coming, because you and I, we share information and everything, and we try and keep up to date with everything. But there is a lot of misinformation on both sides. And I get that when you're in a war, you have to keep certain things quiet, but there's still a lot of, no, don't believe that person, don't believe this person, this has happened, that has happened. And really, we can't back a lot of it up at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I know. And, I've been saying this since the onset of having my show. Listen to everyone, follow no one, right? And I've always tried to encourage not setting up these little echo chambers. And again, because people are leaving the echo chamber of the mainstream media, coming here looking for alternative news. And if we, as show hosts, try to exclude people who have different points of views, then we're guilty just the same as creating another echo chamber. So I've tried hard not to do that. I've gotten in trouble quite a few times this year because people just they got angry at me. It was like, well, how can you have this person on and then this person on and they have juxtaposed views? I'm like, oh, isn't that the point? We're trying to figure things out. So I hear you, and it's frustrating, and especially probably frustrating for the people who are just now kind of waking up to this. Most of your audience and mine, they've been at this for a while, and they're still struggling some days because weird things happen, and you're like, oh man, that one hurts. I thought I had that one solid, or I knew what was going on this particular thing. So, but imagine the people who are just now reshaping their worldview, and they're grasping to hold on to something, and every day they might see a show host say, hey, don't listen to that one, or that one's this, or that one's that. I could see how that absolutely frustrating that is. The only thing I could say, guys, is don't stop. Really don't stop. You have to question yourself. I know it's difficult. You have to question yourself. You have to question everything you hear. Don't take anybody's word for anything. You have to internalize it and feel it for yourself. This is the world we're in, because if you stop now, really what you're doing is disconnecting. And if you're disconnected, how the hell can you defend yourself towards what's coming and what's going on if you have no clue? So that's the opposite end of the spectrum. So yes, maybe there's some days where you need to disconnect to just recharge your battery, go outside in nature, go hug a tree in the back there somewhere. I agree with that, but don't completely disconnect from alternative sources here, because you'll be at a disadvantage. It was Mark Twain, I think, who said, if you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. What was the other one? If you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. And if you do read the newspapers, you're misinformed. So, it's complicated. And that's even more true today. So I don't know. What would you say to the audience here?
Yeah, I think we talk about it a lot, but I think everyone, even the audience today, all of us still need to keep an open mind, that we keep thinking, and everyone keeps saying, when they find out what we know, when we find out, and we have all been researching in these different channels for a long while now. Mm-hmm. But I do think we still need to maintain that degree of humbleness and sort of admit that there's lots of stuff that we're probably not seeing, because if we were, we wouldn't be having this dilemma if we were seeing it all from either one side or the other. Mm-hmm. And life is complicated, and there's so much going on that we're not aware of. I think, that even within the people that are watching this thing, there's some people that believe, there's this whole long list of people that have been, I'll be careful with my words, and then there's other people that don't believe that. So there's all these different shades of grey in terms of understandings and beliefs within that. And I think it's really important for us to know that most of the time, we don't know. Mm-hmm. We can have a strong opinion, we can have a strong feeling, but until we've really experienced something firsthand, a lot of it we are still guessing. Now, we might all have different levels of intuition, different levels of channeling, different ways of tuning into the situation. But when we're sort of talking about all these things have happened as fact, I think that can be just as dangerous as the sleepers that are talking about the things that we ridicule as fact. So I'm wondering whether part of it is the fact that we as a community that are doing videos like this, watching videos like this, I wonder whether there's something we're missing on that score as well, that not quite keeping an open enough mind. And I wonder if we're slowing down the progression to that to some extent.
I beat myself up every day with that, thinking, okay, what piece of the puzzle am I missing? Because I still don't get it, right? And I've done a couple of shows on this. Like I maybe have 80% of the puzzle, maybe, if I'm lucky. But I know there's a big chunk I don't know. And so every day I keep thinking, well, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? Oh my God. Like I'm trying to protect my family too. And it drives me absolutely nuts that I can't figure it all out. And that's because we are in this thick fog of woo. And so I say that to the audience too, like, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Sometimes people get angry with me because in the chat they'll say, well, I know Mr. T did that.
Yes.
I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Because the board said so, the 17th letter said so, because you heard it on the news. Like, how do you know? Are you inside the group? Like the 12 maybe people who actually know what's going on here on this planet? If you are, okay, good for you. Come on my show and let me know what the hell's going on. But if you're not, I would suggest to you, you don't know. You think you know. You've heard other people say they know. You've heard other people repeat other people, and this is the problem. They're all repeaters of the same information, and suddenly they're all saying, oh, we know this is a fact. Mr. T is doing this or Mr. B is doing that. And I'm like, well, I don't know.
And that's what I love. This is what I love about the communities. And I love your community and I love my community, because what I see is a lot of this openness to you get to a stage of awareness when you realize it's more about what you don't know than what you do know. And I find that so exciting because I love learning. I love discovery. And I think it's really empowering, actually, when you can put your hands up and say, there's so much I don't know, but I'm willing to listen and look and find out and feel and experience, etc. Suddenly it takes a huge pressure off yourself, because coming from quite a scientific community, it's so frustrating when people are constantly quoting stuff as a fact, which is subsequently very often in science then proved to be wrong a few years later as we get more information, better equipment. And this is what I think about this. We are at a moment in time, and our understanding is in a moment in time. And in any moment, we can change that, because new information, new experiences will come to us. I mean, when we were having conversations a year ago, I don't think any of us thought we'd still be in this position by now. And what I have found out about what's going on in a lot of places in Australia and some in New Zealand is this weekend, where they're stopping some people having access to their bank accounts, where there's videos circulating about forcibly doing interventions to people and things like this. And you're just like, wow, you know, there's so much more to this picture. And I think the important thing is that we're all still talking about it. We're sort of mulling over. When I speak to you, often it's just, you know, my thoughts aloud, friend to friend. And then once you actually get things out and express it, sometimes the next step forward becomes a lot clearer. Certainly for me, it does.
Yeah, me too. That's why I like having these conversations. And I started this whole channel to do exactly that. I couldn't care less if nobody watched the show. I wanted to have these conversations with people. It turns out people want to have the conversation and follow along and share. That's the other thing too, sharing in the chat and through emails. I get to learn so much more that I didn't even know I didn't know. So it's absolutely a beautiful process. Thank you everyone for sharing. And Susan says, yeah, the woo is humbling. Of course it's humbling. And I think that it is a big relief when we can say, I don't know, and try to disconnect and really think, well, what do I actually really, really know? I know one thing. Catherine and I were talking about this before the show. I know we need more people to wake up. Yeah. And Catherine and I were kind of debating as to why we were saying that, and we could get into that here too, because in some circumstances or circles or whatever channels you're listening to, you'll hear the narrative that more people need to wake up in order for the good guys to act. That's not my stance. My stance is more people need to wake up in order to stand for their rights themselves, because there's no other people coming to defend them. That's my point. And I know right now, even just judging around me, we still need way more people to wake up and say no this far, no further. Of course, not advocating for any violence of any kind here, but we can do this, but we can only do this if we wake up everybody else. And this is why continuing to have these conversations, difficult as they may be with friends and family and, you know, at the party, at the restaurant or your Christmas party or whatever it is, they need to happen, because, man, what you just mentioned here, so 33,000 visitors on lockdown after they went to this amusement park, and then they were all forced to take a test. I'm like, wow, can you imagine being part of that? That's wow. Okay. So yeah, I feel for you when people say, well, it doesn't look like it's going our way right now. That said, there's a lot of lawsuits going on right now that appear to be hindering the process here. And eventually that takes time also. So it is a little bit frustrating. But what do you say to that? The part about the waking up part? Like, how do you want to maybe share your points of view here to maybe for the audience to understand that a little bit more as to what needs to happen, who needs to wake up, and why they need to wake up? What would you say to them?
I think that's a real crux of where we're at the moment, because we've heard so many people say when X number of people wake up, whatever that might be, then then this will happen, and then the military action will happen, etc. And I completely don't go for that at all. I go much more on what you're saying, is in terms of we need to start taking responsibility for ourselves, for our own families, etc. I'm not waiting for anyone to come along charging on a white horse to save me, unless it's Daniel Craig, and then you can come and get me. But no, but in all seriousness,
James Bond.
Yes,
sorry.
That's very good. Yes, I saw that skiff. But it's so important, because what we've got to realize is we all talk about the connectedness. Everyone in the spiritual land, we talk about we're all connected. We talk about energy can't be created and destroyed. We talk about the flow of energy. And yet so often we then can fall short ourselves of actually taking those brave decisions. And for me, I just think it's really, really important with an open mind to keep asking those questions. There's a big difference between having a conversation with people and asking them questions to telling them what they're getting wrong and what they're missing. There's a huge difference. And I've had quite a lot of people write to me over the last couple of weeks, sending me letters of conversations they've had with friends and family. And actually, quite frankly, I've been horrified, because if I was a friend and family, I wouldn't react very well to that style of communication. Because if the opening sentence is you're wrong and you're blind and why can't you see this, and you've almost closed down a conversation happening to begin with. And I think there's been an arrogance, a lot of what the Wake community have criticized others for, I am seeing in the language that's coming across. And I've been taking a really closer look at what I've been saying and how I've been sharing information, and, continually to do so, because we've got to start taking responsibility. If people around us aren't waking up, then keep asking those questions like you and I do, in terms of, well, why? What different way can I present it? What isn't hitting the point? What can I do? Because we can't keep blaming them and people outside of us. This is the very old 3D way that we've been talking about for so long. So if we're not hitting the mark with people, now, of course, everyone's on their own soul journey and they have their own path and they've got their own path about what they're going to do and what they can cope with, and everyone's got different stresses. But if we're constantly seeing people around us that are not even starting to ask the right questions, then I think we've got to really challenge how we're sharing information, questions we're asking, conversations, how we're conducting ourselves, because it's always a two-way thing. It's always a two-way exchange of energy.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, admittedly, when I started waking up, I probably sounded a little crazy trying to wake up people around me, and probably way too aggressive, right? But you're so passionate when you just wake up, you still maybe have some anger. Oh my God, these effers are lying to me. Maybe they're lying about this, right? And so you get into that negative mode, and you probably scare more people into not listening than listening. So I find that humor now works a lot best, or this somewhat detached emotional aspect works a lot best. And speaking of humor, Lakeside Laura says, "Oh, Jean-Claude cracked me up on his comment, Janine, about mix." He still has some dingle in his dangle, I think is what I said. Yeah, that was funny. But again, see, it's all about maybe changing the frequency of your language. There's a guy out there, Awaken with JP, and of course, he's really, like, when you think about it, changing so many minds here with humor, because I've had more success waking up normies sharing his videos than sharing videos of XYZ truther on YouTube, because this way it's like comedy, but it still makes them think. It maybe take a little bit longer, but it seems to be working. I don't know, but like I said, it was a learning process for me as well to try to communicate differently. And I think most people in the chat here would have that same necessity to maybe review how they're communicating their message, because again, it's all about how many of us wake up to this. I think the longer we have sleepers, the longer we're going to be in this nightmare. I mean, that's wow, that's a soundbite right there. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what? But how do we do it? How do we do it at this point? Because I was so surprised at a party last weekend of some of the discourse and like the level of like brainwashing to the point where I thought they were making a joke.
Exactly.
And I was like, and Sarah and I were like, oh, he's not joking. Oh my God. Okay. What do I do with that one? I just kind of like, I was completely dumbfounded. I mean, I get there are people who are not awake, but so brainwashed to the point of him saying the things he was saying. I was like, wow. So I wonder, like, for the people in the audience watching the show, have you, maybe you can give us your comments. Have you found that you have been able, or you recognize that your approach needs to change? And if you change your approach with people around you and you've had success, let us know what that approach was and share that. So here in the live chat, but also in the comments after, if you're still watching the show on repeat, because a lot of us might get cues and clues from other people's experiences. Rachel Smith is laughing. Yeah, I guess she's on delay. She's laughing at the dingle dangle joke. Anyways, so let us know what you're doing. But I don't know. I'm just now entering November and I'm thinking, okay, am I going to be in November of 2022 saying the exact same thing that Catherine and I are saying now? Or is it going to change? I can't possibly, like, listen, I can't possibly see us being here in 2022. No. I just don't see it.
I don't.
But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, because at the same time, in 2008, 2009, with the Lehman Brothers and the crash of the financial system and all that, I couldn't see ourselves in 2021 still kicking the can down the road. Yet here we are kicking the can down the road. We appear to be at the end game of that now too. There's so many signs or writings on the wall. But in terms of this narrative, man, I can't see this going on another year. What are your thoughts?
Well, I really don't see it going on another year. And I'm seeing some really good sort of comments in the chat. But I think one of the things, again, I don't know, there's something definitely shifted in me massively over the last couple of weeks. And I think it is this awakening that a lot of the conversations that I've heard from my friends and colleagues that are on the same wavelength as the people here and as us, I've suddenly realized that how actually stuck in our belief systems a lot of us are. And so I'm seeing comments going through like, they can't wake up because they're not at the same vibration. Well, we all know energy is contagious. If you have two tuning forks and you've got one going off here and you've got one down here, they'll equalize in terms of frequency. So that proves my point. Again, it's like we've got this belief that poor little things, they're down here and they can't wake up energetically. But all that says to me is we've got to do more to raise our own individual vibrations to help bring them up, because it is very true. You know, you were saying about JPCs, who I love. Laughter is a very unconfrontational way of having a discussion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it opens up a lot of people, because it's not coming across as blame. It's not coming across that they've got to employ their ego and understand something from a scientific perspective. Laughter is quite a leveler, I would say. And I think a lot of people also, one of the things I hear more than anything else is it's not my job to wake anyone else up. And on some levels, I agree with that. But on another level, we're then conflicting and having these conversations and sort of saying, well, more people need to wake up and sort of blaming the normies for keeping this situation going. And I'm thinking, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't sort of say it's not your job to wake people up and then blame the normies for not waking up. So I haven't got an answer to it, but I've just noticed that the current approaches are not working. You know, when I started to try and share some of the videos that I found really enlightening, I noticed the tone, the confrontational tone, put a lot of people off from even engaging in it. So I honestly think all of us, and we'll all have different days. You know, I'll have days when I'm quite good at this, and I'll have days when I'm really not very good at it because something might have pushed me off target. But I think we've got to look at the way and the energy and what's really in our head, because if we're thinking that they're normies and we're the enlightened ones, immediately we're going to attract resistance.
That's a good point. And I know, like what you were just saying there too, I'm trying to develop that in my head because, yeah, for a lot of us, we're like, oh, let's try to wake up the normies, but that implies that we're not doing anything else ourselves. And I like what you're saying there too. Like maybe the point is like if we crank up a notch, they'll follow as we go, and so eventually they'll be where we were at maybe a year ago, or I don't know how it works. But that's a good point actually, and I agree with you too. It is. Well, you and I have to agree. We're out here trying to educate other people, so we know that it is our responsibility to try to wake up the rest of us. And we feel, for some reason, or we're called to that mission, right? Maybe some people aren't, and I would suggest maybe the people that aren't, maybe still have to look into why they're not. Maybe they have other healings to do on themselves first, and that's okay too. Like we're all in different, portions or of our trajectory here on the planet, and as it pertains to our mission, not just for ourselves, like our recurring karma, but also for the people around us. So that's a hard one, huh? And it's very interesting.
Hard, and I don't think it's not blaming ourselves at all. I don't think, do I think there's some people to blame? Well, I think there's some people to blame, but I wouldn't necessarily call them the humans. But equally, I find it is a really fascinating discussion. If we're sort of spiritual, awakened, into our own self-development, at the core of that, we respect, I think, well, my understanding, and please feel free to put me right if I'm oversimplifying this or getting it wrong, but we then are taking responsibility that we attract into our lives what we get. And I've seen that big time. So even something as simple, I was having this conversation with someone this morning, walking into a restaurant or somewhere where there's a nappy mandate, and walking in with complete confidence without one on, you don't attract any trouble. You get away with it. But if you've got that nervousness, like you're doing something rebellious, then suddenly people seem to come and confront you. And I think it's very interesting when we really look at, I can see for myself some of the discussions, say with my family, that have gone disastrously wrong. It's because I'm getting annoyed because they are still assuming I'm the same person I was when I was 20 and treating me like that. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not that person anymore, which I'm really not. But then I think, well, actually, I'm probably treating them like that, whether it's as a conscious or a subconscious level. I've got my beliefs about them and their beliefs and everything. And actually, if you go in, I tried an experiment and I went in with a completely different attitude of completely openness from the heart. And I did get a very different response. Now, I'm not saying I could have half the conversations I wanted to, but I got an opening, I got an acceptance, and I got a different response to what I would normally get, because normally we'd go in at loggerheads because we are so different. And actually, I was thinking I've got to accept some responsibility for that behavior. And as I said, I know when I go somewhere where there's a particular mandate, my daughter was a classic example. She was at university in America where it was mandated, not just that, but loads of others. And she just had a completely clear attitude. I'm not going to it. I'll sort it out. I'll sort it out very gently. And I was all ready with all the legal documentation and all the stuff that I could have gone in. And she said, no, I'm going in gently first. And yes, it took a few attempts, but she absolutely did it because her boundaries were 100% clear. This is not negotiable. I know I'm going to do it, but I'm doing it from a place of understanding where I'm going to make your job as easy for you as I can.
Oh, that's fabulous. Wow.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, like lately I've been having conversations with odd people, like the gardener, like the guy who cuts the grass and all this stuff. And instead of saying what I know, because they'll say a few things and I'll realize very quickly where they're at. It's very easy to gauge people. But they'll say something, I'm like, okay, there's openness there, right? So they'll say something that's odd to them, right? And I figured, okay, let's just talk about the things that are odd. So I'm not questioning your beliefs. Did you take the right decisions? No, none of that, right? I'm not accusing anybody. And then I put it all on me. Well, I find it odd that such and such, whatever, doesn't make sense. Or I find it odd that politician lied to us because 2 weeks ago he said this and now he said that. So which is it? I'm confused. I find it odd that blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. I'm like, right? And then so we're having this conversation. We're exactly on the same things, that things are not as they seem. And so we kind of leave it on there, we should mull it over, because if things are not as it seems, what the hell is really going on? Maybe we as human need to figure things out, because I'm tired of this. Like this has gone on long enough. And that is so, like, everybody went, oh yeah, I'm exactly with you on that page, right? As opposed to telling them all the list of 10 things that you could say that would completely shock their worldview. At least you're talking about the inconsistencies to a personal level of how, like, I was frustrating with them, or I got duped, or I thought this and I thought that, and I was lied to. Then suddenly that was not offensive to them, or it was, what's the word? They could associate that very clearly also, because of course, I mean, the mainstream is lying every day now. I mean, it's just, it's Let's Go Brandon is the perfect example of how, oh my God, they're trying to, what's the word? Gaslight you on the 6 o'clock news, telling you it's Let's Go Brandon, when in fact it was something else. Everybody knows what it was. So it's like, okay. So when you talk about that level, then suddenly people can have a conversation with you. I don't know. Is that a way to move forward? Maybe it's one of them. For some of the people, that seems to work. But how fast does that work? I don't know. That's the problem. It seems to me that we're running out of time here. Again, you just mentioned New Zealand, Australia, what's going on, because that's going to be moving west. It's going to be hitting you, and then it's going to be hitting us in Canada here too. Like that's the plan, right? So where do we stop this dead in its tracks? I don't know. I was talking to Cliff Hyde the other day, and he says, he says it's 50-50 right now, but he thinks that England could potentially fall the way Australia and New Zealand did. And I'm like, oh man, that's not good news. But then again, if they fall, okay, so what's next for Canada? So that was kind of, I'm trying to map up the next 3-4 months in my head here. So what are your thoughts on all of this here too? Are you seeing, go ahead.
Well, I think your approach of looking at things that are odd is really, really important. And they're going to then point out things that we haven't even noticed as well. Because when you're completely set in your belief, then, you're not open. At some level, you're still not open. And whether we like it or not, things are not happening fast enough for all our liking, because things are progressing to a level that is causing a lot of people now some serious distress in their lives. And so we've got to try something new. So I think we should just be trying these new things out and sharing very quickly amongst groups like this what is working, what are your successes. And I think also just being an example, once again, when you're recovering really quickly, if you get ill and you recover really quickly, you share what's worked for you. If you're keeping yourself healthy despite all these things going on and everything, you share what's good for you. Be an example of what people can do, not what they shouldn't do. Because I think when you tell an adult things that they shouldn't do, you automatically come up against resistance. Whilst if you're sort of sharing some things that have worked for you, then you might just be, I've seen it time and time again in the holistic work that I do with my clients. You plant those seeds, and then when they need it, they water it and it grows. Now, we do need to speed it up. We do need to speed everything up. But that's why I've been thinking, God, we as a community of people doing chats like this have got to somehow change our approach, because the one they're doing is blatantly not working at the moment, or not working quick enough to make a difference. Because we could stop this so quickly. We know the mandates are just mandates. We know that if enough people just turn around and say no. So just before we came on, I saw that an Illinois judge has suspended the requirement for Chicago police to be. And then we're seeing other people put back the passports. So we are seeing where the resistance rises up. We are seeing quite a lot of good successes, but we're equally having a lot of areas where there isn't this resistance and pushback, and therefore they're being pushed into it. So I think share suggestions, guys, share what's working for you. Share the positives and ask in an open manner, share humor, share it in different ways that we haven't done before, because you will reach people if we try and change our approach. I'm sure of it.
One thing you just said here too, let me bring up Andrea here. That's the link to donate to Catherine's website here. Guys, please do
well
go.
Done, Andrea. She's on a train. I'm surprised she didn't have the internet. Andrea's
There
on
you
a
go.
train.
Please do go and support Catherine's work here. What you just said also about staying open and being in that conversation of what's weird or what not to, and really being open, because I learned a lot of things. You're right. I learned a lot of things that way too, because I know what's weird for me, but I mean, I live in my life. I don't live in everybody else's shoes. So I don't necessarily know. I can't possibly know. But I was talking to this restaurateur and who got the jab, and who's a little bit frustrated because now he's the police. He has to monitor who comes into his restaurant and all that. But I was having a conversation with him about what's weird. And I wasn't talking about the restaurant business. I didn't want to cue him on that at all. We were just talking about stuff in the news. And he was like, yeah, I know, that's weird. That's weird. Like, it's so weird. It doesn't make sense. He says, look, I'll tell you one better. He says, well, since they introduced this mandate last month with the paperwork, he says, technically, everybody in my restaurant is safe, right? Because they all have the passport. He says, well, tell me this then. Why hasn't the government lifted the capacity limits on my restaurant? If everybody's safe, I should be all back to capacity with 100, like all my seats available to the restaurant. They haven't done that yet. So he says, has nothing to do with health then. There has to be something else. I'm like, right? So this conversation about, I don't understand this. Maybe you can help me figure it out. That whole thing, he brought to this conclusion to his head too. Like, wait a second, this wasn't about health. They're trying to stifle us. They're trying to shut us down for some reason. For some other reason, I don't know. But still, that's what he got there, and you could tell after that he was like, "Huh, I don't like that." So it's like, I know. And it was a brilliant example of what you just said, how this conversation can open it up. Yeah.
And I was speaking again in Australia. So there's two big instances where two quite big gyms, and you can only go in and use the gym if you've got a passport and been double. And yet they'd had mass outbreaks, so they'd had to close the gyms. And then suddenly the people, these young lads, were saying, well, hang on a minute, everyone in here has been there, and they're still closing us because we've had an outbreak. How does that happen? And it's like, these are the things that are going to ask questions. And all the way along, we have been told by, the 17th letter of the alphabet and other groups, things like this, you cannot tell people, you have to show them. And I am seeing that come into fruition in terms of actually, you do have to often show people. Unfortunately, we seem to be a little bit thick-skinned on the human side of things, where we can take a little, we can touch that hot ring on the stove one too many times, and then you really burn yourself and you think, oh, but that's a perfect example. And I think the lawyers that are coming out are doing a brilliant job. I was listening to, we've got a brilliant lady, oh my God, if anyone, Anna de Briseret in UK, she is amazing. And, when you hear how eloquently they do it, and what I love is when she speaks, she's got this brilliant gift of speaking in a very straightforward way and unemotional. Because I think that's the other thing. This is where I have gone wrong, speaking from personally speaking. Sometimes when I'm really passionate about something, I get quite emotional in the way I project it. And then it's very easy for people to dismiss it as you just being emotional and things. Whilst if you can try and keep it in a calm, objective tone, I think that a lot of people are more likely to engage with you in a conversation, because as soon as you start getting highly emotional about it, people can pick up on that energy and back off.
Yeah, absolutely. And here too, there was this lady, lawyer in Canada, that was explaining how this process is moving forward, and she was talking pretty much like the person you're describing now in the UK. So we need those out there, because there's a lot of confusion on the law front as well, and people maybe making mistakes as they are trying to maybe fight the government on the legal battle. So I think that's very important. I shared a few of those videos on my Twitter as well, if you guys want to go check that out. Let me ask you this question. I don't even know if I can get there, or if we can have this conversation here on YouTube, but where are you on the idea that okay, I'm trying to find my words. Some people would suggest that the thing, right, is a self-imposed euthanasia shot. right? That ultimately is what it is. Where are you on that? If you gave a percentage, do you believe that to be the case? 100%, 50%, 80%, 10%?
So are you asking, do I think it's a euthanasia shot, or are you asking about the free will aspect of people taking it? So I'm not quite understanding the question.
Actually, both.
Both. Okay.
Right.
So I feel, because I find it worryingly that I think, right, if I was Mr. Evil, what would I do? So my perception on the first question, whether it's a euthanasia shot, is I personally think absolutely yes, because when I've looked into it from a scientific perspective, it makes no sense at all, nor the pushing. But I equally think they're too smart to euthanize everyone in one go. So I believe the fact that there's some immediate reactions and some delayed reactions. And of course, a lot of that is going to be dependent on people's existing and predisposed health conditions as well. But equally, the way it's been rolled out has been incredibly easy, at least in the initial stages, to choose what substance they give to what different age groups. So I've seen a document today that I haven't fully reviewed that is showing that the shot that they're planning to give to the 5 to 11-year-olds is different. And this is what I feel has been happening all along. I think it's been very easy to target certain age groups and certain demographics. And I know you in Canada haven't watched the James Bond film yet. I really feel for you but without giving too much away of spoiling it, the thing is they've had a lot of people's genetic information through all these genetic testing, the ancestry testing, the fitness testing and everything for ages. So it's very easy to target certain groups as well with certain things like that. So I absolutely do believe it is a euthanasia shot, but I believe they're sensible enough not to do it all in one go. And therefore there will be a rollout and a delayed reaction of quite a few of these things. In terms of the free will, this is something I've given a lot of thought to, because yes, I do believe we're all on our soul's journey and we all come here with a contract, but as humans, we do have free will as well. And I don't believe that we just come here and don't ever have to make a decision in our life because we just go with our predetermined destiny. That's not my belief system at all. I believe we come in here with certain soul contracts to learn, but I do believe that those can be overridden with certain choices that we make. So that's my perspective. So when people are saying, well, it's their soul contract, whether they leave their earth or not, I'm not wholly on board with that. I can see some perspectives of it, but I equally think that the free will side of things, we make conscious or unconscious choices every minute of every day. So I think it's more complicated. I don't see it as that simplistic myself.
Okay, so I'm pretty much tracking with you on everything you just said. So on the first front, is this a self-selective euthanasia shot? Unfortunately, I think that's the answer. I mean, if you look at all the evidence that's presented to you, if you take that out of the equation, nothing makes sense. If you put that idea back in the equation, then suddenly you're like, oh, shit. Okay, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And this is where I think a lot of people kind of get stuck, or they get hung in this developmental process here of trying to figure out their next step, because their mind wants to go, well, how can that be? I wouldn't do that. Who would do that? Right? Yeah. They get into that. Well, that's not possible. Well, wait, is it possible? And then they kind of get stuck in this weird feedback loop of, well, wait a second. Can it actually be that diabolical? Is that actually what they're doing? Because if it is, I have to contemplate things here that I haven't thought yet.
Yeah.
So right, maybe we can get into that here. We're already at 44 minutes. So let me just backtrack here to the part about free will. I agree with you there. I think it's much more complicated than we think. And I haven't put my head around it. So yes, I know there are I know. Yeah, I have this inner knowing that some people are, whether they know it or not, they are choosing this exit because it's their time to choose this exit. And this is the method at their disposal. So I do understand that. Now, I do understand that some people have been fooled also to take this exit ramp. Will they be able to recover fast enough and get back on the street as opposed to the exit ramp? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they have to work at it. I don't know. So having these conversations for those people who were fooled legitimately and it's not in their soul contract, maybe they have opportunities there. That's all I can say. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Again, I'm not in that camp, but if I were, I'd be, what would be the word? I'd be frantic here to see how do I get back on the on-ramp, right? To make sure that this was not my exit, because I didn't choose the exit. So if somebody just told me, hey, did you know you just took an exit? I'd say, no, I thought I was going in my direction. I didn't think so, right? So maybe this is a conversation for a whole other show, because it's complicated, this one. So let's go back to, if it is indeed what they're doing. Now, there's a character out there. He's been on my show. He's been on your show, Cliff High. He's quite controversial at times, quite funny, and absolutely brilliant. Some people say he's crazy, but that doesn't mean he's wrong, right? And he says that too. But in this last video, Woo Up, you could tell he's frustrated here. And kind of like you and I too, we're seeing a lot of emails. We're getting a lot of things. Hey, things are not moving. We're frustrated too. And we could see it in our audience too. There are people who are frustrated. But Cliff was particularly frustrated because he has been for a long time on the page that this was a self-selective euthanasia shot. And this was in fact war. And it's the last war and what he calls the unannounced war. Every other time we had issues, whether they were orchestrated or not, we were told by officialdom, hey, now we're at war, you guys got to go do this and you'll suffer the consequence from that. In this particular case, we haven't seen that yet, and that's the issue. If you go outside this morning and you look at the clouds and you see black clouds, your brain's going to go, oh, black clouds, I need to bring my umbrella. It might rain on me, right? So here, the black cloud has been obfuscated. We don't know there's a black cloud. So a lot of people are walking outside without their umbrellas, not knowing there's a storm front, or in this particular case, that we are at war. So maybe that's the question here moving forward for these conversations with other people too, is to try to find a way to communicate to them the correlation between wars in the old days, when you talk about food shortages, riots, curfews, lockdowns. These are all words that seem to appear in wartime, right? So if maybe there's a way, maybe there's a JP Sears watching this right now who will find a funny, cute, innovative way to use all those words to correlate that in people's brain, to break that cognitive dissonance, to realize that we're actually at war. Because once you do that, again, just like if somebody told you, hey, you just took an exit, did you know you took an exit? If you knew you were at war, then you might not be planning that same Christmas vacation, or you might not be planning this whatever you were about to do. You would think, whoa, wait a second here. If that is actually true and it's coming here, or it's already here and I just haven't noticed yet, how do I protect myself, my family? How do I get out of harm's way? Then suddenly the whole discourse changes. And I think, of course, this is why this is so insidious, this self-selective euthanasia shot, because most people don't know they're at war. They're not bringing the umbrella, so they're not protecting themselves, essentially. So what are your thoughts on that? How do we have this conversation moving forward without triggering people into deep despair, a fear? Because, again, this will trigger a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Right? Video, you can see from the comments, a lot of people were triggered into fear.
Yeah.
But maybe that's part of the waking up process too. I don't know. We all have different bandwidths in which to communicate this information and to get it through a global consciousness. What are your thoughts, Catherine?
I think the thing is, we're all in a different level of belief system. So my belief system is I 100% believe that for anyone who's taken it and has regrets, that there's a lot that can be done to do that. I believe that healing at a quantum level, I'm not talking about med beds, I'm talking about the power of our own mind that can actually achieve amazing healing. And we all know about the placebo effect, but there's also the nocebo effect. And the worry is, if you tell people that they have had a death shot, then a lot of people, the fear will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you tell someone that they're going to die within 6 months of cancer, that normally happens. So I think that it's really important that the message comes across as a choice. So if you choose to want to change your trajectory, here are some of the options open to you, and these involve you doing this, this, and this, not some savior coming along on a white horse who's going to give you another shot that's going to reverse the fact of the shot that you first had. I think when you take accountability for it, to me, it's almost the same argument, JC, as we're talking about, do you give forgiveness to some of the people that have been involved in the really nefarious activities? So we know that there's a whole degree of, whether it's people that have taken the clot shot or whether it's people that have been involved in hideous dark cults, some of them have been born into it. Some of them have been abused and mind controlled from their day of birth or from very young ages. And therefore, you've got to ask, I would put that in the same thing as how much free will have they had? And when they've got to a stage where they've come out or had some awakening from the mind control, have they made different decisions about their life? And we've seen very clearly that some people are able to do that. And so I think, again, with this euthanasia shot, which I truly believe it is, I think it's been very cleverly staged. I don't think they're all the same at all. I really don't. I think that's why we're going to see things happening in stages. Is I honestly believe that anyone who's had one and truly thinks from this day forward, I'm going to take control of my own health, I think there's masses that can be done to override the effects. And I personally am very confident in that. But for me, and this is purely my belief system, is I feel it's all about personal accountability. If you're prepared to take on the responsibility yourself, then I think all those tools and healing will come to you. If you're going to still have the attitude where you're going to pass over responsibility for your life to someone else or blame someone else, then unfortunately, my personal belief system is you're unlikely to be successful in your healing.
Okay, well said. And I have to agree with you. I mean, again, it's not always been popular on my show to say that there's no external savior and nobody's coming to help you. You are the cavalry you're waiting for, but that means you have to be self-responsible. Same thing with your finances. And maybe we can end on that here. We have about 8 minutes or 10 minutes left on the show. Going back to Cliff High, he was on my show last week, and he was talking about this Nasera Jacera concept and the quantum financial system. And in his point of view and in his research, he absolutely does not think that that is anywhere remotely in the cards. That what we're seeing right now is going to be the last war, as he said it. And it is the biggest opportunity, on the positive side here, it is the biggest opportunity humans have ever had to get this bug off our back. And we're showing examples of that now. But he said after that, we are rebuilding this organic human economy, not what all these guys have been trying to processize here for maybe the last 20, 30 years. And he's convinced about that. And he was very adamant about that on my last show. And it did cause quite a few comments in the show. But for some people, that was very, very frightening to them because they'd been following people for the last year or two saying that everything's going to be all right. Everybody's going to be rich with this Nasera, whatever it is. And that it's going to be abundance for all. And you can just sit back, relax, and do nothing. And so what do we say to the people who, again here, whether you just talked about the health, but for their finances, who are under the impression that they will be better off doing nothing and expecting the nanny state or whoever the good guys to come and fill their coffers after all of this transition is true? How do we have that conversation?
It's so hard because people, some people are so attached to that happening. I think, again, it's the same thing. It's like if you're waiting for some new financial system to come in and transform you. I've had this difficult conversation with quite a lot of people that have contacted me over the last couple of weeks. And I'm just like, they're like, when Nasara and Jacera happens, I'll do this, they'll do that. I say, start doing it now. If you've got any belief in whether you call it the law of attraction or the energetic universe, if you're going to keep living your life, when this happens, I'll be happy, I don't believe anything is going to save you, quite frankly, because I think even if you got given the money from Jacera and Nasara, if it's a real thing, it wouldn't be enough because you're caught in that mindset trap of when this happens, I'll be happy. I'm of a firm believer is take action now. So visualize, work on and put energetically out there what you want, and then take inspired action towards it. And if you realize you're going on course, of course correct, because we'll go down blind alleys and we'll get things wrong. So on the financial system, I have personally decided to not think about it. I'm not holding anything up in my life based on the fact that the financial system is going to change. If there's one thing a few things that are certain in this life is everything's going to change, and our current physical body will die at some stage. I don't think we die, but I think my physical body will change, and has changed many times in the past. So I think, yes, people can take different decisions that make them feel positive, that they're taking control back into their own hands. So, for example, for me, that is physically holding, say, gold and silver, or cats and guinea pigs. Land would be my preference.
Both of them in equal amounts.
In equal amounts, and I know what I value most. But actually, in all seriousness, if I had any money, I would be putting it into land, because land, I can grow my own foods, I can support people, I can support animals, I can support a healthy living style. But I think there's been too much focus on these new things coming, which we just do not know. And there's been so many people caught in this, when this happens, everything will be okay. I think it's very, very dangerous. And I think we should stop worrying about whether it is or isn't going to happen, and infighting, and start living our lives today and start creating the life we do want. So personally, I'm one of, a lot of my friends are now swapping things and services rather than doing it just for money. So we've already taken steps, not as much as I'd like, because I haven't got as many people near to me that are of the same mindset. A lot of the people that have the same mindset are different, but we're already swapping services, bartering, getting away from the dependence on the money, and also really valuing what do we want to do. Stop wasting money on clothes, throwaway objects, disposable things. So I'm sort of almost deliberately not putting any attention on what is going to happen for the financial system, because I don't believe that's in my control. But I do believe what is in control is to start living my life the way I want it to move forward, right here, right now.
Right. Well, you talked about owning and holding physical precious metals. I think that's the part of the empowerment that a lot of people miss in here, because they'll say, well, okay, I need to diversify, Jean-Claude, what can I do? Can I use this vehicle? And at this point in the game, when people say that, I'm like, guys, I really don't know. If you're diversifying inside their system, you're still not diversified. So the physical silver and gold outside of the system, yes, now suddenly you're diversified out of the system, and you're also putting yourself in a position, like Catherine just said, to be your own bank, where you have the assets to trade with other people without a third party. That's absolutely huge when you think about it, especially if, and in the event that in this financial transition and in this last war where we as humans get rid of this bug, we have to understand that this bug is what put in place this central banking warfare model that we live underneath now, this debt slavery system. So when we remove that, this is what Cliff was talking about. An organic economy is going to come through, but that means that we become now our own central bankers. We don't need that third party. Just like in the healthcare, we don't need that nanny state telling us which thing to take and when. In this last video that Cliff was on, he was talking about basically the bond vigilantes that led to the 30s and the depression and the reevaluation of gold. And what he was saying is that we're about to see that now, in his opinion, and also from the data that's coming out of his webbot, predictive linguistics. He's saying that he believes that China might be the ones this time around that revalue gold here in order to get out from underneath the bond issue they have with Evergrande. And in that same phrase, he said, but here's something else. In the 30s, we didn't have another avenue. We only had the physical gold and silver, in some extent, the bonds. But when the bonds crashed, everybody who made it through to the other side were in physical gold and silver.
Yeah.
This time around, we have crypto. And crypto is a complicated beast because there are the centralized cryptocurrencies, what the governments are now trying to introduce, what they call central bank issued digital currency, in order to extend their fiat control over you. And then there are the decentralized one. And we're seeing that fight play out in real time now, where these governments are trying to ban the old one in order to legislate their new ones into place. So they're trying to get rid of some of the competition. And we're seeing that now over the last year in earnest. So there's a lot there to learn for the audience. I think there too, people get overwhelmed as like, well, how do I start with that? Right? Yeah. That's holding physical and silver. That's easy. You call your broker, you just put a little bit in, and you try to dollar cost average every week, and you just hold your assets in your own position outside of the system. That, for most people, it's relatively easy to understand. The crypto thing is a little bit more complicated. Janine and I have these monthly shows where we do the Beyond Crypto Woo. We explain all of this in some detail, and we track some of the ones that we think are going to make it through here. Because again, whether it's Cliff and other analysts, they know that a lot of these cryptocurrencies are going to fail. So yes, if you're going into this too, you really need to educate yourself. Just listening to somebody else telling you this and this and that is not going to cut it. If they're telling you the why of things and why things are going the way, then you can make those decisions for yourself because you understand the game, so to speak. So I think that's really big right now. So what would you say to people right now on that front in terms of crypto? Where are you with that? Where's your audience with that? How do you think that is part here, maybe of the system here, to flow through some of humanity here as we transition to whatever it is we're going to?
It's an area that I really haven't got into at all. I've got a couple of good friends that are massively into it, and I know you're very, very knowledgeable. And the reason I haven't is because my lifestyle is out and about, looking after the animals, looking after my family. I'm incredibly busy out and about on the land sort of most of the time. And so when I've got time to research, it hasn't drawn me at all. It really hasn't drawn me at all. Every time someone mentions Bitcoin to me, I get a repellent feeling. And so I have to listen to that. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't cryptos that I think are going to survive and going to be really good. And I think for some people, everyone, I think the fundamental point is all of us, everyone here on the show, everyone has got their own piece of the jigsaw puzzle. We need the really intelligent. There's a lot of people that have been bashing the people with multiple degrees. We need the Judy Mikoviches. We need the lawyers. We need some of the brilliant doctors. We need the people that understand crypto and are looking into that. We need the people that are into natural health and natural remedies like myself. We need the people that know how to garden and set up land and do without pesticides and detox the bodies. All of them, that's just a fraction of them. We need the people that can home educate. And I think everyone has their place. I think there's some brilliant people, you included, on the crypto side of things, who are very tuned in with their intuition and are looking at it from a logical point of view, but also using their intuition. And those are the ones I would follow. The pure reason I haven't got into is my priorities up until now have been very much on, and continue to be, on the natural health and empowering themselves through the health side of things.
Right.
And I'm not drawn to the wealth side of things. Perhaps I should be, but it's just not my expertise, and it's not where my passion lies. So I'm very happy for other people to hold that passion. And I think, again, go with what's drawn to you. I am trusting that all the inspired action I'm taking in the other areas will mean that I will be okay moving forward, supporting my animals and everything financially. But it's just never been a focus of mine. And I think this is where you've got to be true to yourself, because if we were all into the finances, if we were all into the natural health, if we were all into the gardening, it wouldn't work. We've all got our unique skills. And that's where it's lovely that we can know that we can go to someone else and sort of says, okay, what do I need to be doing in terms of this? So I think there's good and bad ones. Like I said, I think there's ones that are going to survive. I definitely think the financial system is going to very quickly, very soon, I feel, completely transform. But what that looks like, in all honesty, I've not put any attention on. because I just trust that either this is all going in the right direction, and in which case we're going to be all right with that, or it's not, and in which case we're not going to need money where we're going anyway.
Well, that's a good point, because I've said this with Janine on quite a few shows. I think humanity at some point is going to know money. Like, right, with technologies coming out, free energy, all these things, eventually we don't need money. But right now we have a system of slavery that is dependent on this financial system. And when that system is under stress, like it's been since 2008, and they keep, kicking the can down the road and printing money like it's going out of style, we get to these points where humanity needs a transition. And so this is what everybody is fighting for right now, that transition, or a take or a piece of the transition. So in some cases, people will talk to you about the Nicera, Jacera, quantum financial system. You're seeing these banks saying, "Oh, no, don't look at the original decentralized cryptos. Look at our CBDCs." And I see some people in the chat saying, "Hey, silver and gold is real money, but crypto belongs to the CCP." And I didn't have to argue with that. In some cases, yes, absolutely. In some cases, absolutely not. And again, this is the education. I think this is what scares a lot of people of really thinking about crypto. And again, here's what I feel. Just judging and reading and looking at governments' moves over the last 10 years, it's become very, very clear to me that whether I want to or not, our governments are going to a cryptocurrency model.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, just so there's no other way about it. You are eventually going to be forced.
Yeah.
And this is perhaps why the passport is there. Okay. It's an initial step into that system, just so you know. That could be a whole other conversation. But we're eventually going to be forced to use crypto. And then when I came to that conclusion, I said, well, if I'm going to be forced to play in a game, I might as well know the rules of that game. So I started studying this in 2013, 14, to the point where I got confident enough and had enough knowledge to be able to share that with people. So I was teaching this stuff in 2015 and 16. And in those days, Bitcoin was like $300, $400, $500. Now it's sitting at $64,000 or whatever it is today. So there's value there in learning the rules of the game before it's imposed on you. And this is what I think right now is happening. We're seeing the imposition now this year, how quickly these governments have imposed things on us without our will, without our consent, in many cases without legislation, right? Through the boots of their thugs. So I'm like, okay, when is that coming here for the financial system? Are we going to like it? Is it going to be for us? And so this is what I've spent a lot of time looking into this. But I come from the political world, so it was easier for me to kind of forecast and telecast their moves here in the financial system over the last 10, 15 years to be where I am today. So I guess the only thing I could say to the audience here is, like Catherine said, follow your heart here. If you think that you need to listen to this, pay attention to this, doesn't mean bet the whole house, but to diversify out of a system that's broken right now. I think everybody here can agree the financial system is absolutely broken, and it's absolutely unfair. It's designed to steal from everybody and to give to the very, very few. That's how the system is designed right now. And so,
I am going to add to that, I am just at the stage where I'm doing it because I've just sort of freeing up some energy to do that. And I know where I'll be going. And I'm not just saying this to do it. I will be going to yours and Janine's deep dives on it, because I want to go to someone that's got your technical expertise, but also got the spiritual side of the tuning in as well, because to me, that's what resonates with me and how I would know. So I 100% agree, we're radically going to change. It's just something I haven't been focusing my personal energy on now, but I'm glad that people like you have been.
Well, thank you. And folks, Catherine does have a valid coupon code here. It's Catherine Edwards. So if you're watching the show on Catherine's show or on mine here, and you want to give this a try, this is the last report that Janine and I put out together a couple of days ago. It's the Beyond Crypto Woo for October. Catherine Edwards will give you 10%. So Catherine Edwards in one word will give you 10% off. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, well, JC, that's very good that you're telling me what are the good coins and why and all that, but I have no clue what I'm doing. I don't have an exchange. I don't have a wallet set up. I don't have any of this. And this was the big problem for a lot of people. And so this is what Joe and I put together just this last month, this Beyond Crypto Woo Panic to Own crash course. And it says Panic to Own there because we're looking at the timeline of the WebBot data that said a couple of years back that we would get to this point now of hyperinflation, and then suddenly the switches would open up on everyone realizing, oh my God, this is the new system. We're going to be forced into it whether we want to or not. We need to learn it. And so Joe and I put out this, it's about 2.5 hours altogether. It's actually more than 2 hours here. The how to set up your exchanges, your wallets. It's like step by step. You can pause at any time. And basically, if you do this video, by the end of this video, you're ready to purchase your first cryptocurrencies and save them in a safe place with the proper password mechanisms, because this is where, again, people who just jump into this make a lot of mistakes. The newbies make mistakes and they end up losing a lot of money here. So that's another product, guys, that could be of interest to you. So I'll put the links down below. And again, that one too, you can get a 10% off. Somebody says, yeah, that course was amazing. We just put it out a couple of days ago in soft launch to see if we had some feedback here, if we needed to adjust. But basically everybody said, yeah, I took the course. I totally got it. I got my exchange. I got my wallet. I got my first coins. I'm safe. Okay. Okay, I'm there. Because otherwise, if you try this on your own, it'll take you hours and hours of research. And then it's like, well, who do you listen to? Is it right? And so this will save you a lot of time and hopefully save you from doing maybe some difficult mistakes there, what we call newbie mistakes in this field.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm afraid I've really got to rush off, Jean-Claude, because I'm off for a birthday meal out and my friends are sitting in the drive hooting at me.
Well, happy birthday, Catherine.
Oh, I hate. Yes, it's tomorrow, and I'm not going to tell anyone how old I am. That course sounds brilliant. That is exactly what someone like me needs. So I will be doing that. That's for sure. Thank you so much for you two for putting that on, because it's so important to avoid it. And sorry, I've got to dash off, but I really do now. Otherwise, I will be in big trouble.
Absolutely, no problem. Beautiful having this conversation with you again. And folks, please remember to like, share, and subscribe here on Catherine's YouTube channel. And also go and support her here on CatherineEdwards.life. This was The World of Enchantment with Catherine Edwards. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks, folks. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. And
thank you so much. Bye.